panel debate for about 1 hour. Unfortunately, I have to apologize. I have to apologize for Mr. Grimaldi, who called us yesterday evening, and he said there's for personal reasons I cannot attend. He didn't want to elaborate on the very reason, but he cannot attend. Luckily, late in the evening, around 8:30, I contacted Achille Onorato. I called him, and he said, well, this has happened, Achille. Would you be happy to join us instead of Mr. Grimaldi? And he was actually happy to do so. And I very much appreciate, Achille, your flexibility on this. And I'm glad that you can make it and join us in this webinar. I guess you are now in Cagliari, or are you in you are in Sardinia, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Olbia, and I will drive to Cagliari after the web.
Okay. So, and of course, I would also like to welcome you to Torben Carlsen, the CEO, and he was supposed to be the host of the conference today on board of Pearl Seaways. And I think he will still be the host of next year's conference. And I also welcome Niclas Mårtenssons from his Gothenburg headquarter. He was supposed to be, Niclas, you told me, in the Hook of Holland today, but because of COVID, you decided not to travel, as the situation is indeed deteriorating. And that's what we would like to discuss here today. A lot has changed since we have last seen each other, since we last had our conference on board Silja Line last year, and since I last met you, Niclas, and last met you, Achille, in Italy. So the world has totally changed, and I would like to discuss how you, as big ferry operators in Scandinavia and the Mediterranean, Irish Sea, North Sea, have gone through this very, very difficult period with still no view how things will improve. I would like to discuss this. Both the three of you don't rely so heavily on this on the passenger market like some other operators, which I wouldn't like to mention here. And I understood that the freight market is still pretty okay. So what I would like to discuss, and I suggest that we start with Torben, then Niclas, and then Achille, how we have gone through these months. Also the summer months, because there were some high expectations on the passenger market, and these were all thwarted, these expectations, and how you're now preparing for, let's say, what promises to be a rather rough autumn. And later on in the debate, I would also like, it's perhaps less relevant for Achille, but I would also like to talk about the Brexit, because apparently this is something everybody is forgetting, but there's a major thing happening called Brexit. Well, Brexit hasn't really happened, but the transition period will be over. So let's first talk about how you have gone through these months and what the forecast is. Niclas, I suggest that you first comment on this.
Okay, well, I think for all of us, it's been a dramatic 6 months here for all of us. And I must say that even if we have freight on board our ships, we have been very much affected also out from a travel perspective, because it really hit us just before the high season. So from a Stena perspective, we have been hurted very much in the travel. And we still are, actually, and I don't think we have seen the end, absolutely not. As you mentioned yourself, I should have been in Holland today, but canceled it last night because there is more infections coming there, and new regulations from the Dutch authority came out last night as well. So that's why I'm here, and I think we have to get used to this kind of flexibility. Nothing is for granted nowadays. So. But the last 6-7 months here in Stena, I think we have been going through a dramatic period where we have, for example, closed down 2 routes permanently, and those are very much dependent on travel, and therefore we have, so to say, took a decision that we do not see a future for those 2 routes for the time being. Closed them permanently. We have reduced the number of employees around 30 to 32% ashore and on board our ships. And right now we are more or less back to full operation again. We are a more slimmer company and preparing. I would say not so much for the travel period now, but as you mentioned, Brexit, I think that challenge is just around the corner for a company like Stena. And then we just have to learn to live with COVID for a long time period.
Yeah. But can you estimate how many the loss of passengers in a percentage compared to the same period last year? How much that declined, that market?
Absolutely, and as I said, we were hit really hard because everything started, as we all know, when the booking period for the high season came in, and I think we lost roughly around 85% of our travel volume in the high season as such, and that is where we have maybe 75% of the yearly volume. So of course it's hitting us hard, and we can't compensate for this. I think now, if we see a second wave coming in, we will not fall as hard as we did in April because there are less travelers nowadays in October, November, December anyhow. So we're down around 50% today sitting here compared to last year. Freight is very, very, I would say, a restart where we see that the volumes today compared to a year ago are on par, more or less, but there are huge deviation between the different regions, Irish Sea, North Sea, Scandinavia and Baltic Sea. But on average for the company we're on par. But we've been down, I don't know, roughly around minus 35-40% when it was really tough. But there was it really came back quick as well, I must say.
Yeah, because Stena was actually, sorry that I continue a little bit with Stena, you were one of the first really to act very quickly with, I would say, mass redundancies and announcing these route closures of Sassnitz, well, first I think it was Frederikshavn, Oslo, and then quickly followed by Sassnitz, Trelleborg. But wasn't that written in the stars anyway and just accelerated because of COVID? And that's one of the reasons why you could act that quickly. You have told me that although Stena Line is a big organization, you're fast at taking decisions. But to me, these decisions seem to be taken very fast in that sense that I thought, okay, the writing was already on the wall even before COVID.
No, that's not correct, Philippe. We were more looking into what kind of tonnage we need to put on, especially Oslo Frederikshavn in 5 years, because Stena Saga, she's becoming a grand old lady. And our headache was more to find the financial base of having a new tonnage on that route instead. But from our perspective with Sassnitz and Oslo Frederikshavn, and our assumption and forecast did not support too high season as such, and then you don't have a business case anymore. And that's how we calculated. And I think from Torben's perspective, I think the Danish transport minister came out the 10th of March saying that public transportation will be abundant right now. And our first discussion in my group management was, are we a part of the public transportation in Denmark? And so that was said the 10th of March, and the 16th of March we went out and made a redundancy of 950 people, because it's better to do it now than living for hope and calculating with subsidies or other stars in the right direction. So we took that decision, and I think it's still the right decision for Stena Line, and it will be for many years ahead.
Yeah. Because you, Torben, you were in the early days, also in your vlogs, repeating again and again that there were no redundancies. Eventually there were redundancies. But you have tackled the crisis in a little bit, that's how I feel it, in a different way, where you even filled the gap left by Stena by adding a call in Frederikshavn for your Copenhagen-Oslo service. So could you a little bit elaborate how you have approached this crisis on a group level?
Well, when Europe shut down in March, and it was the 11th of March, Niclas, that the Danish transport and Prime Minister went out. But then we stopped our 2 passenger routes, and just for background, we have one route from Copenhagen to Oslo and another from Newcastle to Amsterdam. which are our primary passenger routes, and then we carry passengers on the Channel and in the Baltic Sea. But we basically, after having repatriated the passengers over a week or 10 days, we shut down the service for 3.5 months on those two routes, and we didn't make redundancies, as you said, because we decided at that stage to send people home under different furloughing schemes throughout Europe. We sent home 2,800 people, or about 1/3 of all our people were home on different government schemes until the end of June. We then decided end of June to go through with the different restructurings that we felt was necessary. We looked at how we commercially should look in the future, and designed our organization around that, which unfortunately led to redundancies to the tune of 800 people permanently. As part of that, we looked at the passenger business and said that at least for the coming 24 months, there will be a stronger focus on transport passengers than entertainment passengers, and traditionally on our Oslo-Copenhagen, for example, it's 5 different restaurant outlets, nightclub, so forth. We're obviously not relevant with the government guidance. So we felt we got a little of an orange in the hat from Niclas's decision to permanently close down Frederikshavn, Oslo, because we then decided to make a via call. It's not the same service that Stena was able to offer on that route, because they could obviously make a schedule that fitted those two routes. Ours had to also match the departure and sailing time from Copenhagen, but nonetheless we saw that as something that could help fill the gap a little bit in this period. We lost obviously 100% of the volumes while we were not sailing, and we were probably around the same numbers as Niclas in terms of having lost also on the Channel 80-85% of previous year's numbers. Then in July we saw some light in all this COVID when Denmark and Norway actually opened their borders, and I even believe the quarantine rules between England and Holland, France were not very severe during the first couple of weeks or 3 weeks of July. And I think the one good thing we saw was that once you travel between two safe destinations with what we believe is a reputable operator that makes sure that you keep social distancing, a little bit contrary to your introduction, Philippe, where you were standing very close to each other, but on board the vessel, there's plenty of space, and we saw, much to our delight, that actually people came back and they traveled in July between Denmark and Norway when they were allowed to, and the outbreak numbers were low. In April, to be honest, we were thinking, will passengers ever be back? But we could see they are back when you can travel and when the government recommendations allow you to travel. So that was very good for us to see. Unfortunately, it only lasted very few weeks, and then Denmark started having the second wave, and Norway shut down for Denmark. We continue to operate. It's a lower risk than it was in April, similar a little bit to Niclas's comments, because we have reduced, I think, on our passenger services around 40% of the staff, but it doesn't really help us. We travel with less passengers than staff for sure on our two passenger routes, and it's costing us a lot of money. We have decided to keep operating the routes now with the expectation that things will get better, but it's been very tough, similar to Niclas, to simply lose the high season. And of course the loss versus last year is becoming less every day now, but that's primarily because the other years are also not very strong in these months. So we've been hard hit and have had to make tough decisions and unfair decisions for our staff who have really done nothing wrong, but DFDS needs to survive, so we needed to make some tough calls.
Thank you. And what about you, Achille? Because you're offering a little bit different. Let's say it's a little bit different model you have. It's many domestic services you operate in Italy. Italy has been hard hit. Was one of the first countries to be hit by COVID-19. So how have you gone through that, and to what extent has it affected your operations in Italy?
So, Philippe, I think that the tough decisions are the same for everybody. So also in our case, we had to review our internal process in order to keep the company going, but with less people working. So we arrived up to 80% of personnel that was laid off during the lockdown. On the other end, as you know, we have a public service of transportation in Italy. So for that reason, we were obliged to continue in our trade, and we see this as an opportunity for two things. First of all, because compared to other competitors that lay off the ships and interrupt the service, we were able to reorganize our ship and ourselves in order to offer a better service due to the COVID for the customers in the high season. And for this reason, I don't want to disclose any numbers, but August at the end was a good month in the Med. And for our companies, we were able to sell, let's say, a safe product and to attract domestic customers that compensate the loss that we obviously have from foreign customers. On the other end, on the freight business, we obviously continue to serve in our trade due to the contract of public service, but the COVID was for us an opportunity to recover some customers that left the company and go somewhere else. And last but not least, for the Italian market and for the Italian situation, the COVID demonstrate that the actual scheme of the public services is the right one in order to provide the service to the people and the mobility of the people, because without a scheme like that, there would be an interruption during the COVID.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. I was quite shocked, Niclas, to hear that your freight volumes went down by 45%, or did I misunderstand anything? Or that's quite a high figure. And from what I've learned from Torben in his weekly vlogs, okay, initially, I mean, when car manufacturers were closed and the garment industry was closed during these lockdowns, okay, freight volumes plummeted, but not to such a high extent, I understood. So
Philippe, this was when it was as hard as it can be. It was a very short period, but we saw those really tough numbers. That is not what we see year to date on average. That was really the worst case we saw during, I think it was somewhere in April.
Yeah. But the fact that
Philippe, sorry to interrupt, but the worst weeks in April, we saw figures down to minus 70% on freight, where we were heavy automotive and textile. So there were some very, very bad weeks in April, definitely.
Yeah, but that is now over, so to say, and I don't think. No, I don't think we will go to new lockdowns. I think member states cannot afford new lockdowns. At least that's how I experience it in Belgium, where I normally live. Sweden, you never had these lockdowns. So yeah, you were a little skeptical if I said that this minus 70% will not happen again. So are you a little bit pessimistic, Torben, or?
I'm quite optimistic when it comes to freight. We've seen something similar to Niclas's experiences that freight volumes have come back. We can of course be concerned that if the layoffs start to take effect, that there will be a second wave also of lack of demand. But we're not seeing it to a large extent yet. I'm pessimistic about how fast we'll be back on the passenger side with now the winter coming. But and I'm not very optimistic that, for example, we normally have maybe 10-15% of customers from overseas, Asia and in particular, and I would be surprised to see many of them coming back 21 as well. So but optimistic or positively surprised that the freight is doing as well as it is now in September when I think back 5 months.
Yeah, but yes, indeed. I mean, it's also what you said, Niclas. From very early on, you were forecasting that this situation will, or the decision you take is meant for the next 24 months to come. That's what you said. So, but sooner or later, I mean, I think it was around 900, 1,000 redundancies in Sweden alone during March. You announced. But sooner or later, you will need a waiter again to serve your guests in restaurants, on board restaurants and catering and all these things. So how are you considering this? Or do you believe that the overall market has changed and that it will be even more freight-oriented than it already was? Let's put it like this, until 1999, especially in Scandinavia, ferries were still like floating duty-free shops and bars, so to say. And to some extent, the routes where duty-free is still in place, like on Color Line and even like DFDS Copenhagen Oslo, until the outbreak of COVID. That was also a little bit the model. I remember traveling with Pearl Seaways last year, and the duty-free shop was indeed invaded by people from Asia and all other kind of people. Do you expect that this will take years at least to come before we have a normal life again, whereby passengers now will only take the ferry when it's essential to take a ferry? Could any of you comment on that?
Well, I don't know what you refer to normal. If that is how it was historically, I think we will see a new normal, at least at Stena, and I think also from the market behaviors, if we're talking about passengers. Yes, we do need to have a servant in the future as well. We have reduced the number of employees with over 1,500 in our total system, ashore and then on board as well. I think they will be served in another way, at least traveling with Stena. I do not foresee that we will have so much song and dance on board. It will be more based on transportation guests who actually find the best way to travel is with ferries, but we cannot, if you excuse me, how the market works in the travel industry, sometimes we're forcing people on board with free tickets for them to travel with us because we're sailing anyhow. And I think that kind of behavior we will not see anymore, or the cheapest ticket prices just because we're sailing. We have to adopt our production to the new normal instead, which we haven't done before. So I think there will be a new type of passengers on board who wants to be served in another way. And that, I think, is the new normal. You mentioned tax-free. It's quite ironic here because maybe we're looking into a new tax-free area when we're talking about Brexit. But I think the way we are consuming things and the way that we can actually find in our home market, walking on the streets of London, I don't foresee any new pickup of tax-free travelers on the North Sea because of Brexit. So I think we have to get used to it. And I think this is healthy for the entire industry to understand that we are not in 1999. We are in 2020 and we have to take it from there.
Correct. Yeah. It's also what Christophe Mathieu once told me. Christophe Mathieu of Brittany Ferries. He said 1999 it's now 21 years ago, then it was normal that people were stocking up alcohol and tobacco. We are now living in a world where it's regarded as irresponsible, actually, to stimulate selling alcohol and tobacco. So indeed, I think if tax-free or duty-free returns to the North Sea and the Channel, it will be totally different, I would say, than it was in 1999. Achille, you were mentioning that you had reduced your staff by 80% during the lockdown days. Did I understand well? On board staff?
We arrived some days at 80%, yes.
And was there a kind of
under obvious
in place in Italy?
The law scheme. So, sorry.
The line is not so good, Achille. Was there a kind of furlough system in place in Italy? I mean, how was that? How did you deal with that? I mean, were people paid by the government?
There is a sector fund that is called Solimare that luckily has sufficient money to provide the wage to not just for Moby purpose, but for all the companies. And at the end of the month, the funds pays the people there are in the Solimare scheme. That is a scheme provided by the law for the maritime sector.
Okay. So
on the other hand, speaking about the consume on board, also in the Med, what we notice is that people are very skeptical to eat or to drink on board. So despite in some days the ships were full in August, exactly like in 2019, so the really full the ship, the amount of consumption on board was really low. We invented, for example, the room service or the other kind of solution for provide food and drinks, but the decrease on that side, it's really dramatic.
Yes. But you were allowed to sail with full ships, or because I have the impression that there's been a very different approach from country to country. I mean, if I'm not wrong, Brittany ferries, for instance, their passengers were all sent in cabins, and so they were traveling, crossing the channel in their cabin. Myself, I was traveling in Greece last summer, where the capacities had been reduced, where face masks were mandatory inside the ship, recommended on the outer decks. Well, I have the impression you work with all different flag states and you all connect different countries. How was that dealt with? I mean, is it port states which are dealing with that? Is it flag states? I don't think for DFDS and Stena it was very much a problem, since you didn't carry that many passengers anyway. But for instance, there were reports that when the UK had announced that they would implement this 14-day quarantine, that you sent Stena, was it Hollandica or Britannica earlier to Harwich. Was the capacity capped on that ship? I mean, are there any restrictions? Perhaps first start in Italy. I mean, you were allowed to take 2,000 passengers on board?
So in Italy, it's the Italian flag rules provided by the Italian Administration of Transport. So we were allowed to carry passengers, and obviously we need to assure the distance the distance on board between passengers, and obviously wear the mask and all the sanitizing provided and by the law. So at the end, yes, in Italy we were able to sail with the ships full, and honestly speaking, we don't have any case of COVID also on our personnel on board and also on our customers. So we were very good in order to keep the distance and also monitorize all the seamen on board the ships.
Okay, and how was that for the DFDS? Because you have ships under flying UK flag, French flag. Was that a different approach from the different flag states, or how were things handled?
We had restrictions on how many passengers we could carry on board each of the channel vessels. which meant that we had a reduced passenger capacity. That was not really a problem because there were no passengers, so we could carry the passengers that came, except for that bloody Saturday when all English people had to be home by, was it 3 a.m. or 2 a.m.
4 a.m.
Where we put all the capacity we could and did everything we could to have as many passengers as possible. But that was basically 10 sailings during that Saturday that it mattered. But other than that, the restrictions has not really limited us because there were very few passengers who needed to travel on the channel, and on the Copenhagen Oslo, the restrictions did not impact us.
And for you, for Stena Line, how was that? Probably the same, more or less.
I can just echo Torben here. But our approach was also that it's not really the port and the flag state. It's actually all about the passengers looking into from which kind of nationality we're sailing. So the port A and the port B, what the local authorities was recommending or setting as regulations, that is what we took in consideration. And then measuring our ships on the public areas and see how many we can have there at the same time and reduce the capacity from that perspective. But still, as Torben said, it did not come up as a very big problem for us.
Yeah. No.
I actually think it came up more as an opportunity finding new customers and not only for Stena, but for the entire industry. For those who were used to squeeze into a Ryanair flight and without the dogs and the mother-in-law, all of a sudden they can bring everything on board. And I think the industry have found some new segments there.
Yeah, absolutely. And still something I don't understand. I mean, I flew from Brussels to Gothenburg the other day. The airplane was, I would say, 3/5 full. It is possible in an airplane to sit one next to each other. And I don't understand. I mean, why has the ferry industry not be perhaps more active to say, well, how is it possible that the airline industry, apparently they are a very strong lobby, managed to get that, let's say, get full airplanes, although the airplanes are not always full. And whereas there are, let's say, limitations for ferries, but then there were no limitations in Italy. So, but anyway,
our main concern, the main trouble for us has been the travel restrictions, not the spacing, because there's plenty of space on board the vessels, and we can manage that more or less. So the big problem for us has been the ever-changing travel regulations and how the quarantine rules work, which is really difficult for our passengers to figure out, and even for me to figure out, even though I study it a lot, because there are so different ways that it's implemented by all the different countries. That nobody dares booking a ticket 1 week out because they don't know if they can travel. You saw Niclas couldn't. 2 days ago he thought he was going to Holland. Now he's not. I tried to get to Germany last week, and then almost on my way to Germany shut for people living in Copenhagen. So that's for us at least the one big challenge is that there are restrictions for travel, and people do follow the government's recommendations. Obviously, it's not in Denmark there's not a law against travel, but they follow the government's regulations, and which is good that they do. But those travel restrictions need to be structured so that they are uniformly applied across Europe. Maybe people have different limits or countries have different limits, but they need to, you need to know exactly what to do regardless of what country. That would really be a help for us.
Well, I think it has shown that United Europe is nice, but public health is not part of their power. Isn't it time actually that Europe will get more power on public health, and that we have like a single decision on that? Because indeed it's very challenging, especially for you, to adhere to all these rules. What is white today becomes black tomorrow. So what is your viewpoint on that? Isn't it time now for Brussels to stand up and say, guys, we will manage this now rather than the member states?
I don't know if it's the time to there's enough Brexit challenges coming, but I think something that maybe could be done without the countries objecting too much were to say, well, when you have a quarantine, how does it work? How many days? If you take a test, do you have to wait for the result? If you can get the result in an hour, are you then free? If they made all of that uniform, then Sweden could decide we have no restrictions. Denmark could decide it's 20 and Germany 50, and that I think we could all handle. The problem is the implementation of that is complicated. But I whether it's a matter for EU to step into right now, I think I'll leave for smarter people to decide.
Yeah. Then the ferry companies were also very active on social media during the lockdown days, that they were providing lifeline services, which actually brings me to the subsidy story, more or less. There were subsidies given. I think both Stena and the DFDS benefited from that, but then it was challenged by your friends of CLDN, who said, well, there is no need to get subsidies. There's enough capacity. So what's the point of giving subsidies to companies, as there is more than enough capacity? Same story in Finland, for instance, where Finlines didn't benefit from subsidies. So what is your viewpoint? There was not really a level playing field because of these subsidies, and there have been some remarks on that from operators, and actually also from an operator who was supposed to be on the session today.
I'm happy to give a quick, and then I'm sure Niclas has views on that. We have not received subsidies from the UK. We thought they were going to come with a scheme that would allow our broken service on the channel to continue to operate, since we didn't have the passengers any longer, and UK wanted the service to continue with a certain frequency. But we, I cannot exclude that we received £10,000, but it's to that tune. So we never ended up receiving anything. I think it would have been fair actually to subsidize the broken services. I think where they made the mistake was that they extended it to also ro-ro services, where I tend to agree with, I believe you are referring to CLDN view here, that there was not a need to subsidize the ro-ro, but there was a need if they wanted to be sure, and of course in hindsight we all continued operating, but they couldn't know that at the time, because of course losing all the passengers on a RoPax service, and as Niclas said, 75% of the revenue on a yearly basis comes in the 3 months we lost, was very hard. But we didn't receive. We have received money. We have received money when we furloughed people, but it has not been industry specific. Everywhere we have received money, it has been part of the general national schemes.
How was that in Italy, Achille? Did you get any subsidies on top of the subsidies you already get for Tirrenia?
So in Italy, let's say that, as I said previously, the actual scheme of public services to the island, I think is the winning scheme, because assured during the lockdown the service for the mobility of also for the sanitary, for the foods, and for the necessity of the islands. On the other side, we work a lot with the Asarmatori Association in order to get some compensation to the passenger lost, not for our group obviously, but for all the RoPax sector in Italy, and in a decree law that were issued in August, the government is going to provide around 50 million euro of compensation of passenger loss to all the companies.
Okay.
It's not so much money, because the amount of passengers lost, I think it worth more than 1 billion in all the sector in Italy, but obviously today every euro counts, so it's okay.
Yes. So what we've also seen, I mean, the cruise industry, they have been hit very hard, and one wonders how they will survive this, of course. And to that extent, I think that the ferries are much better off, or ferry operators, than our peers of the cruise industry. Having said this, though, I mean, the order book was picking up. We've seen orders. Stena has ships on order. Ropax is on order. DFDS, you also have Ropax is on order. You have the lengthenings going on in Turkey. How do you see the Ropax market and the new building market evolve? Do you think that we risk that plans that there were will end up in the freezer? What is your point of view on that, Niclas, and then Torben? Well, and then perhaps also Achille, because you also have ships under construction in China.
Can I just give a quick comment from my perspective when it's coming to subsidies as well, just to clean out that one? I just want to echo Torben. There's a lot of talk before and promises, but it ended out as pocket money for all of us. I think including those companies who complain have received more furlough money than subsidies in each country. And you should also, before complaining too much, understand the cost base of running a Ropax and a cruise ferry versus running a Ro-Ro. So I think somebody's blending up things that shouldn't be blended. Yeah. When it's coming to our new orders, we are all living in an industry where we have asset-heavy costume, and I mean, we're not investing to just survive for the COVID for 2 years. We're investing for the next 30 to 40 years. So when it's coming to Ropaxes, I don't see that there is too much speculations in the order books. It's more phasing out all tonnage and in some cases also adding on capacity. So I don't think we will see any major deviations in the reducing order books for Ropaxes. I think it's more looking into the order books for Ro-Ro, where it's more speculative, and also see that many ships are built in a new sizes, and the question is if that holds tight with potentially a new market base. From Stena's perspective, we do not have any deviations in our new buildings at all. We continue as we have decided before.
Yeah. But perhaps you earlier told me in an interview that even ships like Stena Gothica and Urt still serve their market very well. Perhaps that could now change a little bit as demand will shrink anyway, or most likely will shrink. So perhaps we will see all the tonnage being phased out more quickly than you had first anticipated.
Well, it could so be, or finding a flexible tonnage or a flexible vessel, so you actually have the right vessel on the right route and not necessarily phasing them out as such, but potentially, shuffle around with the ships as well. But for sure, there will be changes. But from a Ropax perspective, I do not expect any major deviations, not at all.
Oh. And what about you, Torben? Because you have you just your latest addition to the fleet arrived in Vladingen yesterday. Flandria Seaways. You have one more on order in China, and then you have 2 Ropaxes on order, and actually also an E-Flexer, which you will charter from Stena Ro-Ro. How do you see the market develop? I mean, also perhaps the Ro-Ro market, because there was already an overcapacity in the Ro-Ro market even before COVID-19 hit us, with ships being unemployed. How do you see that market evolve?
First, I was happy to hear about Urt. I think I was traveling on Urt when I was a kid between Zealand and Fünen on the Great Belt. I'm happy to hear that she's still alive.
Yeah. You're welcome.
She has been aged in the meantime and lengthened even. So,
in terms of it's a complicated question, Philippe. But today, DFDS, we have one ship that we do not operate, one Ro-Ro vessel in our Turkish operation. All our other Ro-Ro vessels are operating, and also the Flandria that will start operating, I think, from the 4th or the 5th of October to Immingham. Of course, there's probably some overcapacity here and there. We know that there are more Ro-Ros coming in, but there are also Ro-Ros that disappear in the smaller end. their military use of some of them. There's different things that, could we see 12, 18 months with too much capacity? Maybe, but nothing that we see as a major issue over a longer period, and nobody will order new vessels now, so there will be an equilibrium in the RoPax. I think there has probably been there are more different parties that order RoPaxes than ro-ros. Stena obviously has by far the largest standardized series that we will also benefit from taking one of them on our channel service. But RoPax is actually, at least in the market, on the Baltic, there's been not too much impact on the passengers. It's a lot of necessary traveling going on there with migrant workers and drivers. So the impact has been less than it has in the North Sea passenger markets. So I'm on the channel. We are completely convinced that travelers will be back once the COVID is under control, and therefore we will need the vessel that we have ordered from Stena. And so I'm not too concerned about the overcapacity right now, even though of course COVID will lead to some overcapacity in a short period. But I'm happy to hear my colleagues here how they see the situation.
Yeah, but you somehow expect that new orders will not be placed. Just to give the DFDS example, when you ordered these two RoPaxes, 4,500 lane meter RoPaxes at GSI in 2018, February, if I'm not wrong, it was communicated that you held an option for 2 more ships, and it's very unlikely that this option will be taken, I think.
Yeah, first of all, I think they're only 4,100, but I could be, maybe you are.
I think 4,500. And by the way, Flandria Seaways will go from Zeebrugge to Gothenburg and not to Immingham.
You see, you're better informed than me, but then there will be another similar vessel going.
Yeah.
Humbria
Seaways will switch to Immingham.
You should work as a consultant with us, Philippe. But that's true. We are probably not ordering the next 2. How likely that ever was, is a question. We needed the 2 vessels for our services in the Baltic. We didn't need 4 vessels, so no plans have been changed due to COVID on our side. We are happy to see that ordering hopefully stops from many operators now, because there is enough vessels, and I think. If you need a vessel, I'm sure you can charter it from another. That's the good thing about this industry. There's not, even though I compete with Niclas head on certain areas, we don't mind chartering vessels from his sister if that's what makes sense, and vice versa, I believe. So there's no need to go and build new vessels if the capacity already exists, because we don't hold back if we have surplus capacity from chartering to other parties.
How do you see the market evolve, Achille? I mean, you have ships on order also at GSI. Construction of the first one has started. How do you see the new building market evolve, both on the RoPax side and the ro-ro side?
So, Philippe, talking about the ro-ro, here we are very little, so we have the biggest at the table today. I'm at the window seeing what's happening. So, but being at the window and observing the situation, personally, I'm a little bit worried about all the new tonnage that is coming in the market, and I don't see in the next future a recovery on the asset value and on the charter rate both. So I'm a little bit worried about also our asset that we have in our ship portfolio. On the other end, I think that today who is building in China, like us, are very lucky to have the slot, because due to the COVID, also now the leasing company in China are more rigid in order to provide money to is going to build. So the asset that today we are building, will worth much more than the building price, I think, in the next future, and can be also used for our personal purpose or as was said, also for chartering out. So it has more value today than before. So I think that who was approaching the new building today is waiting due to the uncertainty, to the profit that the company lost due to the COVID, and also because the providing of money from the leasing company are more rigid. So who is building today is more lucky from my point of view about the roadmaps.
Okay, but also in your case, I think you told me last year, you had ordered these 2 ships in China, that you were considering a 3rd ship and perhaps even a 4th ship. This will most likely not happen, I would assume.
Yes, for now we have to stop at 2 ships. Obviously.
Yes, I see that we have only 5 minutes left. Time flies, as they say. Perhaps a last one, which is unfortunately less relevant for Achille. A last one is on the Brexit, because we've seen stockpiling now. So there's also a good reason why DFDS is further increasing capacity on the Humber corridor, and so are your peers of CLDN. What do we expect after the 1st of January? I mean, how will that market develop? Because it seems that we are really heading for a hard Brexit, and it will not be a smart solution. So, Niclas and Torben.
Well, we've been practicing twice for the Brexit, so this is the 3rd time we do it. So, well, potentially there will be stockpiling, but we know that that doesn't well, it's not forever. It's a very short period where we have seen stockpiling before. I think it's a bigger downside than upside. More administration, more complexity, more border controls, more custom clearance. So I think, of course, especially from where we are operating from Holland to UK, as well as from the Republic of Ireland to UK, it will be struggling. Potentially the volumes will still be there, but everything will be slower and more complicated, unfortunately. That's what I foresee. Then we have a big question marks when we're looking into our domestic route between Northern Ireland and the rest of Scotland and England, where there is a big question mark, more based from the border discussion, and that is still a very sensitive topic that will be solved. I do not think that will be solved before the Brexit is itself.
And how about you, Torben?
Well, I'm maybe hopelessly naive, but I think that there will be a deal that avoids tariffs for the goods moving between UK and Europe. I can simply not see that that England can afford to introduce tariffs. Everybody knows that the goods go one way, goes to the UK. There will be immediate price hikes for the consumer in England if they, especially for dairy and meat products, put big tariffs on. And Europe will not feel it because we don't buy any stuff from, or very little stuff from the UK. So I'm thinking that that Mr. Johnson somehow will find a way to make a deal that is a big win for him, that will avoid tariffs. And then, of course, everything that Niclas said is correct. There will be delays, there will be more work, there will be border, customs, even though it's a zero tariff, there will be customs control and all of that. We prepared for 4 years for that. Will there be some weeks of disturbance? Maybe, but I think that will be sorted out. And then, of course, we expect volumes to be a little bit stronger here in Q4 and less strong in Q1 as people deplete their stockings again. But we are. I just want to get it over with. I think it puts us so much down to have to worry about this for 4 years now, and long term, I believe in the UK, regardless of the outcome of these final months. But of course, they will face a very tough times the next period if these big tariffs get implemented. But we just want to get it over with and get on with life, and we don't think things will change dramatically.
Okay, thank you, Don. We have just 2 minutes left, and that's also. I had actually one more question in mind. That was also one of the questions that one of the people who's watching sent us. It's to what extent has COVID-19 affected or not affected your decarbonization agenda? Has it no effect at all? DFDS, you have recently announced your future strategy on greenhouse gas emissions. I think something similar is in the making for Stena, where you recently communicated about, Stena Electra. I don't know for our Italian friends, but just a very short comment before we close the session here. To what extent will or will not COVID affect your greenhouse gas agenda?
It will not affect our agenda. This is one of the strategic priorities we never stopped during COVID. We know it will not go away, and we have to deal with it. So there's no change from our side from that. Okay,
and Niclas?
Well, I neither do think it's the COVID it's such. It's the market and the customers who push the agenda, and therefore we need to be ahead of that one to supply our passengers and our customers in the right way. And if that's the demand, we go down that alley. And I think we as an industry need to take that kind of approach to continue being the most attractive industry in transportation of goods and people.
Okay. Last comment from Achille.
Obviously, the decarbonization is the most important challenge that the industry has for the next future. And as Moby, we strongly believe that we have to be very proactive on that. So on the new building side, obviously, we will go ahead. We will go ahead through this program. And as you know, the ships that we are building are LNG fitted, and we would like to go ahead with this technology. On the other side, we have to take in consideration that today the spread on the fuel price is reduced. So on the second, on the old ships that we have in our fleet portfolio, we have to understand better if to install scrubbers and where. So we are deciding on this.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think Torben has to leave for a next meeting, and his car is waiting for him. I would like to thank you very much for joining us today, and look forward to talking to you again in due course. And I think I will see you perhaps on Friday, Niclas, when I'm in the house there. And take care, stay safe, and thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.
And we look forward to seeing everybody on Pearl Seaways next year. Have a good.
Of course. That's also another.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.